The Short Fuse podcasts are conversations with artists, writers, musicians, and others whose art reveals our communities through their lens and stirs us to seek change. I'm Elizabeth Howard, the producer and host of the Short Fuse podcast. We've recently introduced reading groups designed to reflect the creative process of the author. Each one is unique. In this first series, we're talking with Walley, the author of the Venus as She Ages collection, 6 novels. Thank you for joining us. You can learn more about the Short Fuse and our reading groups at shortfusepodcast.com. Thank you.
I met Gay decades ago in a writer's workshop when she lived in Boston. And I've followed her work avidly. I've probably read just about everything she's written, including works in progress. I've reviewed 2 of her books. That's kind of what I do in addition to other things. I reviewed one for the Hudson Review years ago and one for an online journal recently from this series. And my general observation about her work is that it seems to be about love, especially between men and women, and it is, but it's really about identity, who we are by ourselves, who we are when we're paired with someone else, and how we see our identity once we realize how we're being perceived by another person. So there's a multi-dimensional, multi-viewpoint, and I think her work explores this all very well, uniquely, really. That's kind of my observation on it. There's the apparent and the beneath the surface. And I think like most good works of literature, it has multi-levels. It's not simplistic.
I'd just like to welcome everybody as the host of the Short Fuse podcast. Thank you for joining our reading group. And as you know, this is our 4th session, reading through Gay's 6 novels. We started with Strings Attached, and then we went to Any Length and Prison Sex. And Peter, I wanted to say something about you, introduce you. There might be a few people here who don't know you. Peter was a New Yorker, transplanted now to Sarasota, Florida, and has had a career in technology. But he's also published 2 novels, a book of essays, a book of poems, a memoir, and 2 books of short stories. And I understand that you're working now on a nonfiction book. You're a member of the board of the Sarasota Ballet, founder of a Sarasota-based film development company. So we're going to do a dramatic reading from the book. My bedroom faces over gentle trees, which is rare in New York. The light is soft. I lay down beside him because in a way, I like this insinuation of his. It seemed like courage to get close. And since I am timid in love, someone being audacious can push things forward. He held me.
I've done unspeakable things.
We all have. Anyway, nothing is that unspeakable. I have too. Like what? What could be so unspeakable?
I've been a cross-dresser, gone to massage parlors, all kinds of things.
A cross-dresser? I had never met a cross-dresser before. What does that mean? Are you gay?
No, it's just the way of being fragmented. A way to hate myself.
I studied him and stroked his thinning hair, this tall, balding man who was good with words. His mother tortured in Auschwitz. His father orphaned in Siberia. Unspeakable things. He dresses as a woman to be with his mother. I get it. You want to be humiliated as she was in the camps. You want to join her. It's too cruel to leave her alone. He focused his sad, dark eyes on me intently through his glasses. His expression did not portray any emotion, maybe just a quick wisp of surprise that I was trying to understand.
Maybe.
I was thinking about his confession, and it seemed he was telling me, don't fall in love with me, I am ill. At that moment, I said to myself, saved. God knows what he's done. Yet I admired that he was so honest. He was telling me the truth right off. He wasn't hiding his weaknesses like most people do. That's something. As I said that to myself, I realized how lonely I was. Let's go out to lunch, I said.
Okay, we're going to open the discussion, and you can talk about what you'd like, what impressed you in the book, how it made you feel. Can you relate personally to the character and what happened to her or him? So I'll just open it up. Just indicate if you want to speak. Jackie.
Well, you said I could say anything. First of all, that reading, it actually made me feel emotional. There was something throughout the book that touched me that I actually can see. It's the way Mira would kind of rub his tummy, his stomach, in an endearing way. When she was with him, it was like a greeting. And throughout the book, she described him. He was thin, he was handsome, then he had put on weight, and it just didn't seem to matter. She really did see him changing, and sometimes he looked wonderful and sometimes he didn't, but you felt her love for him no matter what. It was like unconditional in a way.
How much of his unpredictability and irascibility do you think went into her feelings, or was that just completely incidental to her feelings?
The unpredictability, that's it. I think that was part of the attraction. She never knew what his mood was going to be. But certain things were predictable. She knew he would be at that restaurant at that time. She knew his habits, but she didn't know his mood. That was the unpredictable part.
Exactly. I agree with that.
And I thought that he looked like that and seemed so disheveled in order to be so different from what might be perfect, like Michael. So Ari was so different from what might be a perfect man, and so she touched his belly because he was disheveled and so often dirty with food all over his clothes, that I don't know if it was so much that she loved him so much that he was so different from the other kind of men that she may be choosing, this other Michael. So I saw him as just different. Maybe he would be the man she would choose, but he was totally different from perfect man. No.
Everyone agree he's not perfect.
I wonder why you made him look like that and seem like that, although he was brilliant. He was brilliant.
But haven't we all had the experience of being in a gathering, a party, seeing a couple, and you go, how can that woman be with that man?
Yes.
Gay, you have said that I found parts of this book very raw. I've mentioned that to you. And when I compare it to a book talking about relationships where so much is left unsaid, and what you've done in this book is to say exactly what was happening. Most people wouldn't dare to do that. And I know perhaps you can talk a little bit about not wanting to publish it. I mean, it must have been very emotional for you to write this, because there's so much in this that it just really gets at core of feelings.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing you're bringing up. It took me longer to write that book than any book I ever wrote. And part of it was the problem of the structure of the book, because their craziness, if there's too much of it, is unattractive to a reader. It's like enough already. So I had to keep it moving. And but at the same time, they are caught in a situation. When I was writing it, I can't remember, it was a long time ago, who was looking at it. They'd say, put it away, actually the agent I had at the time, put this away. And I kind of got a feeling that this was like, I failed. And if you spoke to me in those years, I would have said, I think even in the movie, I say I wrote a book, The Bed You Lie In, and I never wrote a book good enough to go with the title. So Murphy is the one who saw some good in it. And I do think it has a lot of energy. And I think the writing, it's a little different than some of my other writing. It's a little bit more out there. Yes, it's been surprising to me how people have responded, because it shows me that it's universal, which is a book should be. I mean, I think I was joking that I guess everybody's had a crazy relationship.
Not only had a crazy relationship, but they've been in that dilemma of there's the guy who really makes sense, and there's the guy that makes no sense at all. I want him.
But I want to say that my intention, and I may not have succeeded, was that it wasn't that she wanted Arya, that she wanted Arya because she sort of wanted to prove to him she wasn't as bad as he thought. But what it was that his pain attracted her. She could feel her pain by seeing his pain. And that's really, to me, what the theme of the book is, that he was so undone, it allowed her, they say that if you want somebody who's a bit crazy to get sane, introduce them to someone more crazy. She saw his pain. It was so evident from the beginning, as even the part that you guys read, so that it freed her to become undone. And in her becoming undone, she confronted herself. She confronted what he called, oh, you were cute and you were tricky and all that stuff. What he refers to is that he said, I'm getting rid of that. And he did. I mean, he does make her see that she was on the run, and she identifies with his pain. And I think he identifies with her pain, and that's their bond. It's not so much he isn't Michael. Michael doesn't have a shot at being up against that kind of depth of feeling. All the money, like Como, whatever, he hasn't got a shot against the kind of feeling that those two are traversing in. Sadly, it would have been nicer if she'd end up in Lake Como for her, but something really is going on with these two, where they are at the edge of themselves, or at least that was my intention.
So he's like a catalyst to self-healing. Catalyzes a kind of self-healing.
I mean, not intentionally, but they had been very hurt and hurt each other, and in really acting it out, something changed in them.
Murphy, could you tell us what you thought when you first read this manuscript?
Wow, I think Gay might have showed it to me a little bit in stages, right? Gay, I think because she was in the middle of editing like my dissertation. So it was quite a while back that she was passing it over to me while she was also having the agent say, or the publisher kind of take it back and think about it or whatever. And I kept thinking, wow, that she's really writing this. But it wasn't until that summer of 2020 that I said, send me everything that's not published. And it dawned on me then that there was this movement of soul that was happening in the protagonists, as we go through each book. And there was this kind of, you fell in. You're kind of beginning in something in strings attached, right? And then you drop in the second book and the third book, and then you really drop in the fourth. And I think what Peter's saying is this catalyst of happening between the two of them and facing old wounds of the Holocaust, of their historic, that's having huge ramifications on their lives, and that mirror, that's happening. And this really intrigued me. I didn't want to lose it. And, I think, Gay, you were afraid of it a little bit, right? We were in a big debate between really book 2, 3, and 4, can we really bring them out?
Yeah. Go ahead, Jacqueline.
I'm new to the world of gay. I met her by accident outside a theater in New York about 2 months ago. And I saw her movie, and then she sent me her book. So of course, I want to read all the other books. But I wanted to say that I also feel, and maybe I'm, drawing from the other experience too, but that Mira doesn't think she deserves love. She was rejected by her mother, and it's a continuing theme that I see, that she doesn't deserve love. So she actually sabotages herself. Why did she go with Michael? She knew that would hurt Ari. That's his friend. It's his client. She could have gone with anyone. So that's one thing. The other thing is, her mother's boyfriend, of course, after her mother passes away, he wants her too. Like, it's a reoccurring thing that men meet her. She's like this pixie with magic dust. Men want her. They find her attractive. And they're just all wrong. But she sabotages everything.
Right. I think that's very, very right on, Jackie. I think you really hit the nail on the head there. Whenever you're in a relationship with someone, particularly when you're in bed with them, there are really 6 people in bed with you. There's you, the other person, and the two sets of parents. And I think the parents here play a very important role in the book, even though they're disguised, they're not visible, but yet they play a very important role.
Absolutely. She says everything went crazy when she slept with Michael, but she believes it went crazy when her mother dies. The real time it went crazy was when her mother dies. She becomes... The thing about Arya, one of the things that attracts her to him is he makes her understand her mother. She doesn't understand her mother because she hasn't lived with her mother. And he introduces her to Judaism and to where she's from and why her mother is unable to love her. That's a very powerful aphrodisiac for her with him. I mean, she wasn't looking in a man, but whereas Michael doesn't even get what's going on.
No.
Yeah.
Sally, you wanted to say something? No.
That's pretty much what you just said, both of you. That's what I was looking at too. On page 185, it said, they're talking, Arya and Myra. They were saying, we were silent for a few seconds. Then I asked, what is your father like? A sadistic hysteric, he said. We were both silent for another few seconds. Then he said, and you are like your lying mother. But I think that was just one of the many places that it was so, like what you were just saying, so much about this dance that they got locked into, that really they were both they were both children of survivors. And, as we've all read, that can be devastating in itself if the survivors especially haven't ever really been able to heal, which is understandable. The other thing that Gage just said is the Judaism part. Michael saying things like, don't get too involved with that Jewish stuff, and Myra's background had really been not getting too involved with it because her mother had not been really that involved either. And so, the whole thing of this man that's not only forcing her to get involved, but just like you are not going to deny this anymore. You're going to look at this and see that this is not a small thing. And I do think just in closing on that having, I think anybody that's gone through a lot of pain in a relationship, it can I don't think it's just overly simplistic of God, I'm so self-destructive. I guess I won't be with that really nice, wealthy guy. I guess I'll be with this insane, crazy other guy. I wish it were that simple. I think it was that simple. I think I would have been happily married at about 16 with the first boy that liked me, that would have been nice. But I went through many, many years of bad relationships, but it wasn't until I got into my worst relationship. And I think anybody that's been in a horrible relationship is going to find such truth in this book that it just cracked me open. And that's what this book is, I think, where it has great appeal, as you said, Peter, to men and women, is that if you have been broken down by a relationship, by something that you just can't make work, it's just going to exhaust you both. And that was one of the things that one of the lines that she said, he called her 15 times, that whole compulsiveness. I screamed at him and said, "It's over. We are finished. We are too destructive." And those are those kind of things that people get involved in, that either you don't survive it, or if you do survive it, there's a rebirth, I think, a birth of really your real self can come out there if you're lucky. And that's why I just think the book was, I kept thinking actually about you, Murphy, and I wanted to just say, I'm so glad you just said, send me everything you haven't published, because I've known Gay since she was 18 and would not have had my hands on this book if you hadn't said that. So I just love this book. So thank you.
A hidden treasure. I agree, Murphy. Very wise of you to do it. Thank you. Just to follow up what you said, Sally, the approach to this burning, demonic character, in the end, makes Myra stronger. That's the point. And I think that's the essence of what you were saying, Sally, right? It was a healing experience.
Anna, can we, you said you put in the chat that you had a very different take. Can you let us know what your take is?
Yeah, it was earlier in the conversation. I think this book is about the mother. So I agree with that assessment. First of all, I want to thank you, Gay, for writing it. I loved this book. And I liked it because it addresses some really deep issues around identity. And it provided me with the opportunity to have to look up a lot of material that I did not know about. There were a lot of words and a lot of images that I found that I needed to understand. There were a lot of cultural references. And one of the things that in my looking at the words, what is the role of the mother in Jewish religion? Why is it you're Jewish? The mother has such an important role. And I think that that's fundamentally a really important aspect of this book, because it does refer to feelings, a spiritual oneness. And one of the most important statements that you make in the book is on page 78. Sophisticated children raise themselves and accept their mothers don't want to be mothers. I thought that was just so deep and so knowing, because I think that it's the resolution of that question that is really fundamental. And then secondly, I want to say that the book, why I liked it, is because it subverts the structure of domination of the gender roles. I don't know if you ever read Tales of Genji, and there's an analysis of it done by Doris Bargman, and the book is called A Woman's Weapon, Spirit Possession, in the Tales of Genji. And I think that what women's power is around spirit possession of males, and that I found that the stories that you tell about the men are really about performance enactments, that you're resolving, you're redressing the balance of power in the male-female relationship by countering the strategies of, oh, I'm so weak, I'm hurting, I'm in pain, I'm divorcing, I'm not interested in my wife, etc., by possessing the spirit of male. Okay, that's just my take on it. And then finally, the last question that really, really sent it home for me, that really made me swoon, is when Michael does ask you, what do you, or ask the character, what do you want? I thought that was really wonderful. And then the ending of the book in terms of the bed and the transformation of the bed, I thought was really wonderful imagery.
Well, Anna, don't you agree that asking Myra the question, what do you want, would have thrown her into a complete tizzy?
No, I don't think so at all.
What do you think she would have answered?
I think that question is the idea of the relationship of what a woman wants from a man is to act for the man to say, what do you want? And then be able to.
So reciprocity.
Well, no, not even that. Giving up the reciprocity on the male part. That's the subversion of the gender role that I'm talking about.
Okay. It's an interesting, very interesting point. Thanks, Anna.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Hi, I'm Katie, and full disclosure, I have not read this book yet. I'm embarrassed to say, but I do have it. I bought a whole stack of these books at a wonderful gathering that Gay had. Maybe some of you were there. It was just delightful in Lower Manhattan, maybe a year and a half, somewhere before COVID, somewhere around there. But I was recently in a therapy group, and we were talking about trauma and how it can be sort of epigenetic in a way. So in other words, these were people, both of them, I feel like I know them, Gay, because I've known you so long. These were people who had a trauma, from their parents had this trauma, Holocaust survivors, et cetera. Do you think that this kind of thing plays out in their lives? Do they carry on that trauma within themselves? And I would love to see if any of that comes up in the story. And again, I apologize for not reading it, but I would love to hear what you have to say about that. Thank you.
Hey, don't answer that. I'd like to hear someone else answer that.
Okay. Yeah, who's actually read it, right? Yeah.
I think it's a very good question. Someone else want to try, give an answer to that?
Yes, of course. Of course, it comes out. That's the whole thing. The trauma from their parents and the trauma of the war, and the trauma of the Holocaust, and that their parents reacted to them because of the trauma they went through. And therefore, Mira had a life that she has and the deprivation she had because of her mother. And he did too, Ari. Had the trauma, the life that he had because of what his family went through and what his mother went through. Absolutely. So yes, it had everything to do with the trauma of their life, the trauma of their family's life. But a lot is explained, of course, in the book that that it was all trauma, and what we all carry through is whatever we've gone through. But certainly her life, Mira's life is the trauma. This book explains a lot. This book explains why the mother was as she was, and he explains why the Jewish people are as they are. So there are a lot of explanations. I have a question, though. May I ask a question? Who is Joey? What's his role? I know the role of Ari, and I know the role of Michael, but why do we have a Joey?
I've never been asked that, and that's the most interesting question. Because Joey, I think, shows up in a few of my. I think he shows up in Magnetism, the last one. I'm not sure, but anyway, Joey's role is that he's her friend. He cares for her, but he's not trying to own her. She doesn't do well in any books when anybody wants to own her. In fact, she's problematic. But Joey is loving to her with no strings attached. So, I mean, there's no romance going on, but he is truly a friend and he cares for her. So there's something kind of sweet about this character coming around trying to help her buy a bed, and he seems to be aware that she's incapable of doing anything normal. He makes jokes about it.
He has a purpose. He has somewhat purpose other than being a sweet guy. I think he has to have more of a purpose.
Yeah, I mean, I think she's safe. She's safe with him. She's not really safe with the other two men.
Mm-hmm.
I was curious. I don't know if this is in your other books. I am going to read every book, but why did you choose the topic, the two Holocaust survivor children? Why? How is that something that you researched and thought it would be interesting? Is there a history in your family, someone you know? Why did you choose that?
There is a history in my family, and I felt that it's not so true now, where people talk a lot about the generational, what Katie's talking about, the passing on of trauma through generations. But when I was writing this, which was maybe 20 years ago, or maybe, I don't know, something like that, I was interested that I didn't think you get off scot-free. You don't have traumatized parents and then, and you're going to be fine. I mean, there are some people maybe who do. It's not like all children of Holocaust survivors are. And I mean, even Arya says to her near the end, when they're starting to calm down, he says, the children who had mothers in the camps did better than the children who didn't, and important comment that he makes. And you haven't read any of the other books, but there is always this abandoning mother, and that might be autobiographical. In this book, my character comes to terms with that. It wasn't, I gave her a reason. I think I say that. That was all she could. I think it says in the book she could hang it on that. She could hang it on that. Anyway, go ahead.
Do you think that Arya's emotional volatility, his approach avoidance, had anything to do with the relationship with the parent, the Holocaust surviving parent?
His or hers?
His.
He says in the book, you're difficult, but I'm impossible. Mm-hmm. And he's more damaged than she is. She does open in the first chapter. She sits in the park and she sees beauty and she feels renewed. He's more damaged. He feels broken. And when he cries, when he's reading the Malamud story to her, he's crying because he doesn't think he'll ever get healed. She's not like that. She's like a little Energizer bunny that thinks that she'll be okay in the end, even though she gets heartbroken at times. Mm-hmm. But so he's more damaged, and I suspect that he had worse parents than she did. I mean, both his parents were in camps, and so I don't talk a lot about his parents, I don't think, but it's seeing his pain that allowed her to see hers, and that healing agent in a funny way.
Right.
I believe.
Yeah. And I think, Peter, that came out in the reading that we did, when he talks about being unspeakable, that he'd done unspeakable things. So that, in other words, it's bruising yourself, hurting yourself. Yeah. That he has to do things, and even, public displays, because it goes even beyond just keeping it inside. It's as though, somebody's unzipped him and it's just spilling out for all of us to see it. And he doesn't necessarily want he knows that. And that's what he says in that part we read. Way to hate myself.
Everybody who has deep pain like that has a carapace of protection around them, which usually involves acting out or hurting someone else, one or the other, or both. And I think Arya exemplifies that beautifully.
Right. And she has compassion for it. And she has a touch of it in a minor key.
Yes.
And I think Arya's brokenheartedness, one of the reasons that Michael is the third character is that Michael represents to him everything he can't be: successful, a silver spoon, it's like, and that's part of his rage. He not only wants to hurt her, he wants to hurt Michael.
I also think for a woman, if you've had any sort of difficult relationship with your mother, then your own maternal instinct becomes very strong, that you want to then care for other people in a way that you weren't cared for. And Michael doesn't need to be taken care of.
He's self-contained. He doesn't need to be taken
totally self-contained.
I just wanted to return to a couple of points that other people made. I see Joey as a catalyst. That's the role I think he plays. And of course, with the real physical bed, the metaphorical bed, but the real physical bed. But Joey is her very compassionate friend, and he's a catalyst for Mira. On the subject of trauma, as it's been studied very recently, we carry it in our bodies. It is multi-generational, intergenerational, and it's very much in our bodies. And that comes through in the characters of this novel very strongly.
Someone actually used the word epigenic.
I'm coming back to that theme of epigenetics that has been studied in with Holocaust survivors. And again, with Bessel van der Kolk, The Body Keeps Score. And then Fatima Manaka, My Grandmother's Hands. So all this current theme of embodiment of our trauma, and we see it in the characters so beautifully in the evolution of how they're solving these problems for themselves. So you can see it in Arya's, eating, his appetite, his always going to restaurants, all these physical things that Mira and Arya have. And Michael's pretty cool. He's a cool cucumber. So you don't see a lot of physicals. You don't hear or read about a lot of, or pick up on a lot of physical vibe with Michael.
Right.
Somebody mentioned earlier that the book was raw. And as I was reading it, I really loved it too. And I didn't find it raw compared to the earlier two novels because I somehow was relieved with this one, because the other ones I found, there was almost like a knife kind of pain as in reading them, of the rawness of where the characters were at. And this one, because there was more depth and you got a feeling of the characters evolving, that I was kind of more drawn to it. And so that just, as I was reading, I thought, oh, I'm glad it's not as raw as the earlier ones, even though it's difficult relationships. But also, I have to say, I really was struck by how you had Arya when he sent the emails. Oh my God. That was such a great dramatic way to be he put a bomb into that relationship. And that just so expressed his intense rage and what he was capable of. It just blew me away, and it blew her away. So it was kind of, wow, no, it's not going to happen. And then just the way they accepted they're too much for each other. It was just a nice ending.
I totally agree with you. I think one of the hardest characters to write is a character like Arya, because you can either make him too much or too little. And I think, Gay, you get it exactly right. You create a portrait of a person who is angry and deeply disturbed, but not in a way that it looks unreal. So I think you really hit it on the nose. Pamela.
Yes. Thank you. I love this book and I love Gay, although I'm not used to saying Gay. I call her Jackie, but we've known each other for a while and I love her work. And, to me, this was upset. Reading it to me was upsetting because I always kind of wanted to bang her over the head and, tell her to go with the Michael type, rather than, the Arya. But to me, it wasn't surprising at all because, her upbringing and her mother and the way, her mother kind of, disregarded her, made her so that she sought out relationships that replicated that pattern. So to me, it was no surprise at all that she would be in a relationship where, someone was treated her in such a manner, and that she was drawn to that because there was a certain comfort level there in the familiarity of what she was brought up with and what she knew. So to her, that was comforting. And it also made me think of the term hurt people hurt people. Obviously Arya was so damaged and, he wanted to just bring that on, onto Myra anytime he got the opportunity. And, and for Myra, I also see her vantage point in the terms of she was slightly damaged herself, but I think damaged people always seek out more damaged people in order to kind of mitigate their own psychology or their own whatever it is that's driving them. There's a certain, again, comfort level in that, knowing that, okay, this person's more damaged, maybe I can help them. Now I'm the roles are reversed. and I'm the sane one, and this one's more.
In the act of saving the other person, you heal yourself.
That's it. Exactly right.
He was at times trying to take care of himself when he was losing weight and bicycling. And, he was working to be accepted. We see him at times.
She's not completely crazy. He's very verbal. He's quite witty at times. And they have a sort of they remind me of sort of dead end kids together. They go on these jaunts together, and they sort of, he likes to argue, and I think I say at the beginning of the book, he likes to counter, and so does she. And so there's they have a sort of understanding of each other. And that's a big part of the book that is, maybe comes across, maybe doesn't, that he gets her. Mm-hmm. He can't be with her. Mm-hmm. But he gets her. Mm-hmm. He gets destructive when she betrays him. But he gets a lot about her, so she feels seen in some way. Mm-hmm. Michael doesn't get her. He's got her on some kind of, she could be, a plant in his house, and it's not attractive to him. Even if the house is in Lake Como.
Again, back to what we read, that passage has so much in it. He was so good with words. It isn't just words that he would say, Mike, you could never say that about Michael.
I do want to add my thanks to those of you who brought this series together, because it definitely should be a series. I've just been rereading and reading Elizabeth Strout books, and I just love having a whole group of books where the characters, as this series does, the characters kind of weave in and out, and sometimes, they're a little different. And I think it's just, and this, I did particularly like The Bed You Lie In. And I think that Mira is maturing in this book in a way that we haven't seen in the earlier ones. And I don't know if I can say exactly how that is, but she definitely has more wisdom, and she's more aware of her own path in life. And I just wanted to say, because this was one of my favorite parts of the book, and I think in a way a foreshadowing of the end, because I kept wondering, how is this going to end? How is this going to end? And I was happy with the way that it ended. And I loved Joey in the bed. But the part on page 161 and 162 where she's with Michael in this enclave up in the Sardinia, and she talks about how I'm always curious about I usually wake up early because I'm always curious about the day. You just see this, this desire for what her life is about. And the following paragraph, which doesn't have anything to do with Ari, although she's been thinking about him and writing to him the whole time. Now she's just up there in this locked away in this beautiful and secluded enclave, and she sees the real Sardinians swarthy and laughing in old hotels and broken down piazzas and markets. And they were out there gulping life without me. And that whole desire that she then, to me anyway, in the end, comes to be looking for. So that was just one of my favorite parts of the book. And thank you, Gay. It's a great book.
It is true. This book, she's over now. She's dealt with her mother. It's over now. Aria had a lot of fun. So you'll see in the next books, they're not these tortured love affairs. Also, she's older. She doesn't have, she still has ridiculous relationships. But the next one, by the way, is my two favorite writers coming back to life to straighten me out. But it's a novel. So Marguerite Duras and Jean Rhys come back to life too, and we go on a trip to Vienna. So it's really about them too, and what it was in their writing. So that's a lot about writing. I think Mira has worked out her demons in this book.
Elizabeth, do you want to talk about the upcoming?
We have one on Tuesday, October 25th. Right, she said, the book Kay just mentioned. And then on Tuesday, November 15th, we're reading Magnetism.
I just want to thank you all for reading these books, coming. all that you have to say, Anna. I always love hearing what you. I mean, it's just really Murphy coming in at midnight or whatever it is, 12:30, I guess, and Jackie joining us, and just so it's really Tom coming here. That was so great, and Pamela. So it's really means a lot that you take an hour. Because I know none of us have any hours anymore.
Well, it's a testament to your writing, Gay.
Yes.
Testament to what a great writer you are.
And we should pass the books along to our friends. That's how words are spread today about reading. When people say, "What are you reading?" I'm reading Gay Walley.